guest this evening, Mrs. Delia Farquharson. Delia is, as most of you may know, a licensed social worker, and she's also currently a councilwoman in Mount Vernon, New York. Delia, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yari. It's very nice to be with you.
Okay, trust me, the pleasure is mine. It's a thrill having you to get somebody as illustrious as Councilwoman
Ah,
Ferguson. Okay.
you are way too kind. You are way too kind.
All right. So, if I were to ask you, who is
Mhm.
Delia? What would you say? Not Delia the professional. Who is
Not
Delia?
Delia, the professional. You want to know who Delia is? Let me tell you who Delia is. Delia is Miss Mercy's great granddaughter. She's Miss Gurley's granddaughter, and she's Miss Norma's daughter, right?
Okay.
So that's what I come from. I come from a long line of really proud and strong people. I was telling my husband just the other night how I played on my great grandfather's grave when I was a little girl, and I swear he was mad because that night I had such a nightmare. And I never played on the grave again, right? Because the grave was buried on the land under the guinea tree.
You know,
Um,
afraid to box you.
so who I am is a little girl who grew up in the hills of St. Mary, Free Hill to be exact, um, with you know a family of no great means. My mother was a nurse. She had me when she was young, so she finished nursing school after she had me. So my grandmother did the initial raising,
Okay.
um, and then just going through school. I went to Free Hill Primary, then we moved to Portland. So I went to Manchini All Age, and then I passed my exam for Happy Grove, but I didn't want to go to Happy Grove, so I cried and cried because all my family, my uncles and my aunts,
Yep.
they went to St. Mary High School, and I cried and said that's where I wanted to go. So my mother applied for a transfer for me to go to St. Mary High School. So that's how I ended up at St. Mary High School.
So you ended up at the green and gold.
That's
Okay.
how I ended up at the Green and Gold.
Okay. Now, from St. Mary High, your journey to the United States. When you
So
first,
yeah,
yes, go
go
ahead. Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah.
When I
When you
first came.
first came here, was it a culture shock? Did you
Oh
have
my
to
God.
get accustomed to anything, or did you make a smooth transition? What was it like?
It was a culture shock. When I came here, I came as a young adult, and came with the intent of going to college.
Uh-huh.
But for the first couple months, I would say I felt like I'd crawled into a hole and like there was no light. Like I just couldn't get used to it. It was just such a shock to me. And I'd been to the US before, but to live here was just, I couldn't stand being always inside. I was isolated from some of my friends. So it was really difficult, right? To adjust. And I distinctly remember feeling like I was in a hole and the light was far, 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 far up the top, and I just didn't know how I was going to get out of that hole. Um, but I went to I enrolled in Rutgers University. I studied English and African American studies. So I always had that radical, I think, that radical twist to me. I finished my education at Pace University. Um, and by then my mother had migrated as well. So my brother, couple of my brothers came, but my oldest brother didn't come. He was still in Jamaica. He didn't want to come. And um and you know so it was an adjustment, but by the time it took me maybe about a year or so to really adjust, but by the time I adjusted, I was good. I just had to get into a groove, established a network, a supportive network. Um and then I started working, finishing school. And then I got into, so I worked in different fields, just kind of different things, not sure. Because when I was in Jamaica, I was sure I was going to go to law school. Like that's what I wanted to do. As I got older, I wasn't so sure that I wanted to be an attorney. So I kind of, I worked in the telecommunications industry, and I worked in telecom for a long time. I worked for a company called Fujitsu Network Services. And I did well in that company. It's a multinational company, still exists. but I did well in that company. And during that time, I even moved to Chicago briefly, lived in Chicago for about less than a year. Chicago cold.
Yeah, you like the call. It seems like.
Chicago cold. But yeah, Chicago was good, but Yvonne was there. So I tried Chicago for a little while. And then I came back to New York, worked in telecom, and then telecom kind of took off for me. So I did well in telecom. And until, the industry went bust, went belly up. And then I decided I had to make a change. So I went into, I transitioned some of my skills into marketing. So I did marketing for a couple companies. And then after marketing, I decided, okay, well, I have to figure out what was the next level because I was still relatively young. By the time the telecom industry went bust, maybe like almost 15 years ago now, 2008, 2007, 8, yeah. I was deciding what am I going to do. So I started substitute teaching in my school district. From there, I had an experience that just kind of really changed me with a child, and I thought, okay, let me look at social work. So I looked at social work, and I decided I would apply to social work school. So no, this is me, Gary, and I guess it's the St. Mary in me. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to social work school. So I Googled social work schools, and it said Columbia University is the best social work school in the country. I said, that is the school I'm going to go to. So I applied, and it was the only school I applied to, and they accepted me. And so I graduated with my master's in social work, and then I, did my clinical rotations, and worked for a foster care agency, worked in mental health in the community, and then I started my own practice. So now I operate my own practice as a licensed clinical social worker. I'm on the panel for New York State as a mental health professional. And in 2009, I ran for the school board in Mount Vernon. I served on the school board for 4 years. And of course, again, coming from the place of just always wanting to leave it better than we found it, to try to help children, to improve the lot of people. And so that's what I did. I served on the school board, then came off the school board, ran for a third term, was not successful, and then decided, okay, help to elect other people. I worked on electing other people to the school board. Then thought, okay, looked around and said, oh, folks are running for city council. And I thought, I'll do that. Ran for city council in 2015, and I lost by 200 votes, but it was a blessing. And then I ran again in 2017, and I won convincingly, So I'm just now in the third year of my first term as a city council member. I intend to run again, because politics is not an easy game.
Wait, hold on, not to cut you, but when we heard about your victory, that made us so proud. Trust me, that made us so proud.
Oh, that's good.
Normally, you expect a Jamaican to be running in Brooklyn or somewhere like that, but to hear you're up in Mount Vernon. By the way, how did you get to Mount Vernon?
So how do we get to Mount Vernon? So I'll tell you. So we actually lived in the Bronx, right, on New Reed. That's where my mom, it's where we bought a house. That's where we kind of settled. And then once I got married, we bought an apartment, a co-op in Bronxville, which is, close to Bronx and Mount Vernon. And then we lived there. It was a nice co-op. We lived there for a while. And then when I had my second daughter, like, okay, we need more space. We need a yard for the kids to run around. So we looked at houses we looked at Yonkers, New Rochelle, all over. But we were specific in what we wanted in a house. There was just certain things that we wrote down. And so we looked at, I can't tell you how many houses, but I came to look at this house. It was dark. There was no light. There was literally, the light was disconnected in the house. And I walked in, and the woman was, telling me, and I walked into the house, and I was like, okay, this is the house. So I called my husband. It was like late at night, like 7, 8 o'clock at night. I called my husband and I said, I think I found the house. And it was in bad shape. It had the shag carpet. It was just in bad shape. But yeah, we do a fixer up, right? And I And he came, and then so we came to Mount Vernon because we wanted to find a home for our family. And once we got here, then I became very involved in like the PTA, with my girls. I have two girls, and so became very involved in the PTA.
Okay.
And then and then
Let me
from the
ask you,
PTA,
Mount Vernon, upstate. What's the demographics of Mount Vernon like? What
Mount
is
Vernon is primarily a black city.
wow?
So Mount Vernon is about, I want to say maybe about 70% people of black people. The Caribbean people are island people. All the islands are represented here. There are actually 95 ethnicities they say are represented in Mount Vernon. But the Jamaican population here is the largest, comprises the largest number of homeowners, the
Okay.
largest number of business owners,
Uh-huh.
and the Jamaicans have been established in this community for a while, from an economic and a social perspective, but not from a political perspective. I'll tell
Okay.
you why Mount Vernon is important. Ronald Blackwood is the first black man elected to mayor in New York State. Do
Hmm.
you know where he was born?
No, I thought it was where Brooklyn or
Jamaica.
did you make? Okay.
So he was born in Jamaica, and he was the first person to get elected, black man to be elected as mayor in New York State, and it was in Mount Vernon.
All right. But
So
is
he,
wait, is there a cohesiveness amongst all these Caribbean people?
well, you know what? I'm gonna say the sad thing is, right, that
Mhm.
there is somewhat of a cohesiveness, but there's no organization.
Okay.
There's no organization. They
Okay.
represent a lot of political power, and I think you'll find this in a lot of places where Caribbean people have settled. Is that there is there's no political organization, and in many ways that has been encouraged or not encouraged, because I think there are entities. White supremacy understands
Hmm.
that
We're
if
powerful together.
yes, and that if we are joined together, we are that much more powerful, right? And so the effort has been made to keep us separated. So even in Mount Vernon, you'll hear people talk about being born and bred, and there's a dislike for Jamaicans. There's like a um there's some conflict for Jamaicans and for people of color. Them call them the West Indians. So they
All right.
talk about West Indians.
Among our Caribbean people, what do you think causes this enmity that they have against Jamaicans or Jamaicans have against Trinis or Trinis have against Bajans? What do you think causes it?
I don't think that there's enmity. I think there's some jealousy. And I'm
Okay.
gonna tell you why there's jealousy. Jealousy exists because Jamaican people are proud people. You know how we stay.
True.
We show up, we show off, we know so we're bright.
We know
And
that one.
so, right? So we know so we're bright, and we're not shy about showing people that, oh yeah, like we know we can do that. And so because of that, it creates resentment in others,
Okay.
because others realize that um others realize that that Jamaicans tend to kind of take over wherever they are. They tend to take over, and so for it's not unusual for for you to see wherever they land, wherever Jamaican people land, and Caribbean people too, wherever they land, they tend to establish themselves. No, they come with a work ethic that drives them. So when you see a group of people come with just a suitcase, because them never bring no land, them never bring no house on the plane.
Right.
Them come with suitcases, and
On your
then
Messina.
right, and then they buy houses and they buy cars, and and they excel. So then the other folks who perhaps don't share similar experience, or who have been toiling on the land for a long
For a
time
long
but
time.
have not accomplished as much, is looking and saying, Why are you making that look so easy? You know it's not easy, and we know it's not easy. But we have the discipline and the drive, the motivation to get it done, and so that creates resentment.
Okay. Let me ask you something. As
Mm.
somebody involved in social work where you're here and deal with a lot of problems, and then politics also, how do you separate that from family life? When you come
Oh,
home in the evenings, how do you disengage?
um, so I'm gonna say, so like this week was a rough week for me, right? It was a rough week in politics for me because there was a contentious city council meeting, very, very contentious. And the contention is created because, again, I'm not somebody that holds my mouth. I'm not someone um that y- you know I'm not somebody that will back down. So we find that there are folks who want you to go along to get along, right? Who want you to just act like, don't want to ask questions. They just want you to vote or to do what they want you to do.
Not
And
accept
I'm
the
not,
status quo.
I've never been that kind of person, and I never will be. So we had a couple things come before the city council that I disagreed with. And there are things, for example, our comptroller is, is an area of concern for many people in the city. They there are people who want to get rid of her because they say she's not doing her job, this and the other. And but I refuse to villainize her, because even though there are things with which I disagree,
Mhm.
I do not think that's the way to handle it, is to villainize or call people names. And me can hold my own when it comes to tracing. But I don't think it should be, that's something that we should be exercising and practicing, in that kind of way.
Okay.
So, what I choose to do is to deal with her in private. And the mayor or other city council members want to villainize her publicly, and because I don't join in that, then they're trying to villainize me. And
Okay.
so you bring that home. So we had a really contentious meeting this week, and I came home really, but there was a peace that descended on me during the meeting. I came home, I went to sleep, I woke up the next morning, and then I had to do a live about it because I had time, my brain had time to process it. And then I was able to, right, then I was able to talk about it and then kind of move on from it. Afterwards, I wrote another little thing, an email that I sent, and I posted that to Facebook as well. But
Yeah, sorry. Mhm.
but I'm able to but I'm able to separate, because once and the thing about it is that I'm not an emotional being. As a social worker, you develop that kind of discipline
Okay.
because you have to teach people how to manage things not from an emotional realm, but more using your cognitive skills, right?
Excellent.
And so that's what I'm able to do, is I'm able to step back, to think about it, to process it, and then I always make a better decision after I've had a chance to think about it.
Okay. Let me ask you something. As somebody involved in politics, what is one myth about your line of work that you'd like to debunk? What's
In
one myth that people have that you'd like to?
politics,
Mhm.
that everybody in politics is crooked.
Okay.
Many people, most people in politics are crooked, but there are some people who are in it for I know that I am, and I may be an anomaly, right? I may
Okay.
be the oddball. There are many people who are in politics just to feather their nest, who
Okay.
they have no concern for the greater good, for the common good, right? For making sure that we're improving the welfare of the greater good. Um, and so because of that, I think that's a belief that exists, and it's not a myth. It's a really strong belief, but there are some people, and I am one of them, that are in it to do the right thing, and
Okay.
so it exists.
Another question here. What's one thing you wish you had known about this field before you had gone into it?
About politics.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Oh, wicked and lie some people can be. I mean, I think I knew that, but Lord have mercy. Like, people will look at you and just lie.
Just lie.
I'm going to tell you an experience that I had. So our hospital is being closed, right? They want to close our hospital. And I wrote a letter to all the elected officials in New York State that represent our community to say, where are you? You need to, get on the ball. Somebody, and I put my letter, gave my letter to the deputy clerk. The deputy clerk takes it to the mail room. My letters, 5 of them, were stolen from the mail room. Listen,
Let us just walk.
stolen from the mail room. And then somebody in elected office generated a similar letter to the one that I had written
Oh,
to the same people. So
okay.
they thief my letter out of the mail room,
Mhm.
take my letter, put their name to my letter, and send it to the same people. And I'm saying to myself, no, if that is not bareface, I don't know what is.
All right, all right. For another young lady looking to enter your career, your field of work, what is some advice you would give them?
What I say, Gary, is this, that the most important thing you will ever have, no matter how many material things you gather, no matter how much money you have in the bank, what you will always have with you is your name. And if you create a good name, when you are dead and gone, no matter what happens to your physical and material possessions, your good name will live on.
Exactly.
And so that is what I would say. I would say, in all things, protect your integrity.
Integrity.
In all things, protect your good name
Very
and
nice.
do the right thing, even when nobody's looking and you do not get praised for it.
All right. True. Good words. No, let me ask you something here. I guess everything has not been peaches and cream. The road has not been smooth. What is one of your biggest failures? Something that you regret, something that you learned from?
Um, I don't regard it as failure, right? Like I said, I've lost a couple elections. I've run in a few elections in Mount Vernon, and I've lost a couple. I'm going to tell you what. I ran for mayor last year, and what happened was that my petitions were challenged,
Okay.
and it was basically a gang activity, right? They ganged up on me because that's what happens. We come from Jamaica, them not like Jamaican people, them gang up, right? So they ganged up on me, and everybody tried to get me off the ballot because what they understood, Gary, is that if Delia Farquharson's name was on that ballot, I would be the mayor of the city today.
Today.
Yeah. So they knew that they, at all cost, they had to get me off the ballot. So my first 950 signatures were stolen, right? They said I turned them in too early, so they took them. I
Okay.
turned in another 1700 signatures, I thought. And they went through and challenged them, change things in the system. I mean, do all kinds of things to make sure. Because even after they took my first let, I went back again and got more than I got the first time.
President.
And they
That was
challenged.
that was strange to us. I've never heard of anybody being penalized for being early.
Yeah, I'm telling you. But it was a setup, because they understand. And see, that's why when you see, and that's why I'm very transparent and open about the kinds of things that I'm facing in this position, right? Like I air it because I want people to understand that, that no weapon formed against me will prosper. And we can do it. We need to be united, but we can do it because what they're folks, right? And when I say they, I mean part of the establishment, people who are entrenched in the system of corruption, right? Who don't want to see any real change. And there are people suffering right now. I can walk in this community right now. There are people suffering, not enough to eat, living in squalor, right? And those are the things that I challenge on a daily basis. And I'm going to tell you, so that's what it is. And so it's about maybe, and I don't regret that. I don't regret, there were some mistakes made, but I don't regret it because it has taught us something. And even when they did that, I said, all right, I pivoted and I said, we're going to run a write-in campaign, right? And we did the write-in campaign. So what they realize is no matter what roadblock they throw against me, I'm going to find a way.
You're gonna find a way around it or over it.
Yeah.
Now,
So
all right, sorry. In 10
that's all right.
years' time, Where do you see yourself? How far? What I'm asking is really how far or how high would you like to go in the whole political spectrum?
I'm not. I'm not going to speculate on where. Right. I ran for mayor because I believe that I could make significant differences in this community. Like, and it wouldn't be easy because there are forces who want the chaos to continue because the chaos pays them. So you have to understand, and I understand that, and they know that I understand that. So I don't know how far I will go. And one of the things we haven't talked about really, Gary, is my career as a social worker, which is my full-time
Yes,
position,
I was coming to
right?
that. I
So,
want to
but
get
what
politics
I'm,
out of
what
the
I'm
way
going to say
first.
is, I mean, I have a very successful practice as a social worker, very successful. And right now I work with, just yesterday I got a call from a woman, you know, um, an attorney, and she was saying, Delia, I don't know how we would do these cases without you because I make such a significant difference in the lives of young people and in the lives of families. I mean, I work in high conflict marital situations where parental access is being determined, and I work with juvenile justice in these specialized courts for kids who get involved in the juvenile justice system.
Okay.
And those are the places where I'm making the biggest and most significant impact. So even though it seems like city council is such a large part of my life, it's not the largest part of my life.
Okay.
The social work is the largest part of my life, right? I am making a difference in people's lives every day
Every
by
day.
reaching out to young people, reaching out to families, working with young children, kind of like coaching people through their lives.
Wait, as a black person in the social work aspect, what advice would you give to youngsters in today's climate where there's so much racial injustice and we have so many young men being incarcerated? What
Hmm.
would you advise them to say, deal with everyday life and with the police?
The really sad thing, Gary, is that the system is set up for them to fail. I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, and I was telling my husband about it this morning. Um, the system is set up for them to fail. We have an educational system that is not designed for the success of young black and brown children. And so, because, I was telling someone the school to prison pipeline is real, it is not a myth. So, children are being manipulated, miseducated, directed into the prison pipeline system because that is a capitalist system designed to make money for people.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so what do I say to families? What do I say to children? Because it's not their fault and it's sometimes difficult to reach them. So we have to lead with love. And so anybody who has the opportunity to influence positively the life of a young person must take that opportunity, must take the chance to teach them, to show them unconditional love, to help them to understand that there can be so much more, that that we're not limited by our imagination, that prison does not have to be a part of your story, right? Like juvenile justice does not have to be a part of your story. But we have to start with making sure that they're fed, making sure that their diapers are changed when they need it to be changed, because children learn that this is a harsh, cruel world early. When they don't have enough to eat, when they don't have a decent place to sleep, when they cry, nobody answers, when their diapers are wet, nobody changes it, right? When those things happen, when you go to school and teachers ignore you or punish you unduly, when those things happen, it's a harsh system sending a defeating message and writing on the walls, on the minds of these children, that they're failures.
True. No, let me be the devil's advocate here.
Mhm.
Despite all the problems we have as black people, do you attribute any blame to us though? Do you think we are without blame, or do you think there are things that we as black people can do to make things better? And when things that we're not doing? What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, I think, right. I'm going to tell you what the blame is that I attribute.
Mhm.
Um, Harriet Tubman said, I freed 1,000 slaves. I would have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves. And what that means for me is that many of us who escaped, and we're just going to use an analogy now, who escaped slavery through the efforts of Harriet Tubman, forgot to reach back, forgot to provide support, because there are some people who are just doing the very best they can, Gary. They can't imagine anything else. And so, those of us who have escaped, those of us who are more enlightened, those of us who are more educated, have responsibility to help those of us who are still enslaved, those of us who are still existing in darkness. So that's where I put the blame.
How
I
do you
put the
look
blame.
at how do
Hmm?
you look at somebody like before Bill Cosby went to jail? Remember all his rhetoric against African Americans,
Yeah.
and he blamed them for this, blamed them for that. What do you say to that?
I mean, I think Bill, I think, got lost in the trappings of his success, and he began to believe that he belonged to a class that he didn't belong to, because when he stepped out of those bounds, when he no longer served the purpose of white supremacy, they crushed him, they smashed him, they devoured him, right? And the fortunate thing is, it's those people who he
Oh no.
villainized, right? Those are the same people who are giving him love now, who are like, look what them do to Bill, right? Because it is a system that uses us up, you know, chews us up and spits us out. And that's what it did to Bill Cosby. He stepped out of place.
He's got to know his role, stay in
Yeah,
his lane, right?
right.
All
So
right.
that's what happened.
Since we're on Bill Cosby, can you name me at least three people who have inspired you? Three people who have given you inspiration.
So the first one I say is Shirley Chisholm.
Choose them, okay?
Yeah, I really, and I like Harriet Tubman. I just got to tell you, I love Harriet, and I'm gonna give you four.
All right. All
Uh,
right.
the next one is Tacky, and I keep telling people I'm related to Tacky, but I'm not. But in a way, I am, because um, you know, a bitter bullet laid him low. No man knows where he lies, but in the soil he lies, right? So Tacky belongs to us in St. Mary. Tacky belongs to us in Port Mary, because I don't them hang him. And so when I think about Tacky, I feel his energy. I feel his commitment to freeing his people, to living free or dying. And I think that's a strong thing. And it's the same thing with Shirley Chisholm, who was born in America, but grew up in the Caribbean with our grandparents, but also believed that all things are possible. Like, why can't I run for president? I can do that, right? And she did that, and she was clever and witty. And Harriet Tubman had a gun, and she has said, listen, we are running for freedom. And if you think you're going to go back and
You're
tell the
gonna go
white
back.
man that we're running, you ain't going back. I'm going to shoot
No.
you right here. Right. And so, and then, I tell the story of Nanny. My mother used to tell me the story of Nanny, and how Nanny fought the British. And Nanny caught the bullets with a certain part of her anatomy and shot them back at the British. And so I was like, I want to be Nanny.
That used to fascinate me as a young.
Right? I want to be Nanny. So those are the kinds of things that inspire me, right? Because I think from a human characteristic, strong, resilient, honest, committed to something outside of yourself, into service. I mean, that's what inspires me.
What about any Americans like, say, Dubois, Malcolm X, any of those, Farrakhan? Did any
I
of
mean,
those?
I read all of those. I read all of those, and I think I'm informed by all of that. Marcus Garvey certainly,
Yep, definitely.
has a big impact on me. Um, but there are inconsistencies, right? And challenges with some of so I'm informed and influenced by some of those things. But when I center my north star is centered on people who are
Okay.
who are basic
Or
in their commitment to humanity.
all right. Now, as Delia grows older and aging gracefully, as I can see, would you ever go back
Thank
home?
you. Oh,
Would you ever go back home?
absolutely. Well, you know what? I'm going to say this. And Raymond and I have talked about it. Like, where would I want to live,
Mhm.
or where would I want to even have a second home? I went to Costa Rica last year, and I fell in love with Costa Rica. I love
Wow,
Costa
that's
Rica.
what I'm hearing. I hear Costa
Oh
Rica
my
is
gracious.
beautiful.
I
Mhm.
love Costa Rica. I was like, okay, because what I loved about Costa Rica, and I've been to many Caribbean islands and quite a few places, I've traveled.
Mhm.
But when I went to Costa Rica, every fruit that is in Jamaica
Is there?
was in Costa Rica. I mean, Guinea, guava, jackfruit, everything was in Costa Rica. And I was like, this is the only place that I've gone that is like that.
No,
Um, and so, I mean, Jamaica, there's no place like Jamaica for me.
no
There's
place like that.
absolutely no place like Jamaica. Yeah, no place like Jamaica. One of the things that we have been hearing the horror stories so much this year, and I guess COVID is to be credited
Yeah,
with that.
COVID.
But the violence in Jamaica is very frightening. So
Right.
there's a level of feeling unsafe that must be remedied. And I also think that the inequity in Jamaica, people are still living in
Mhm.
a way that it shouldn't still be, you know.
So if you ever went back home, would you ever venture into politics?
You must be mad. Jamaican politics, you have to have gun for your hip.
That is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, Jamaican politics, you have to have a gun on your hip. No,
but do you keep up to date with what's happening? Right?
absolutely, absolutely. I am up on it.
All
I
right.
am up on Jamaican politics.
With the recent elections, what do you think the PNP did wrong or underestimated about the GLP, and what do you think the GLP did right?
You know, one of the things that's kind of like was alarming to me was that only 37% of the country voted.
Mhm.
So if only 37% of the country voted, that's our mandate. That is saying that people are apathetic.
Would you say apathetic, or was it COVID? Did COVID had something to do with it?
Well, maybe that too. But I just don't. I'm going to tell you what. I called my cousin election morning and I said, "You vote already?" And she said, "I'm not voting." I said, "What do you mean you're not voting?" She said, "I'm not voting." I said, "You cannot sit out this election." And she had nothing, she was not concerned about COVID in the least.
Mhm.
Because I have another relative down there who had a stroke and
Mhm.
can barely walk, and she took herself to the polls. And my cousin, who is fine, 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 says she not voting. I'm gonna say, tell me why. And what she said was that, and you know who the representative is in that area of St. Mary,
Mhm.
Dr. Maurice Guy.
Okay.
And she says she's not voting for Dr. Maurice Guy because he does nothing for her. He does nothing for the community.
Then why
She
not
said,
go out there and vote against them? Vote for the.
well, then that was the story. She said the roads were terrible and there was no water. Those are basic things. And he's not responsive. I've been in Jamaica where I was like, take me to his office because I'm going to do a one-woman demonstration right outside his office. I called his office every day. I even called the radio station to complain about him when I was in Jamaica
Wow.
because he was that terrible. So I think it said something that she was just like, and I think she was a reflection of what was happening in the com-
Yeah.
people were just like. So I'm hopeful that Prime Minister Holness and his cabinet will concentrate on improving the lot of more people, right? Like spreading it so that more people, so that people are not working just for bus fare or to pay rent or to pay light bill, because those things are expensive in Jamaica, that we can work to elevate the level of wellness and the level of of the whole community. That's what I'm hoping that we will see from this election.
Election. Okay. I, you know what? I won't even bother asking you about this upcoming election. I don't want you to go
Uh,
off. we'll save that for another time, Delia. But Councilwoman and my social worker, it's been great having you, great
Thank
talking to you,
you.
and we hope we can do this again. And I
Oh,
wish you
it's
all
my
the best.
pleasure.
And in any upcoming election, we got your back. Okay,
Thank you.
Delia.
Bless you, Gary.
Thanks a
Bless
lot.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
very
much.
much. Okay,
All right.
man.
Take
Thank you.
care. Bye now.